If you thought the AFC East was about to get more competitive, hold on for a second because something just happened that completely shakes up the balance of power. And if you're a New England Patriots fan, you might actually be smiling right now. A massive move involving the Miami Dolphins and the Denver Broncos just sent shockwaves through the league. And while it didn't involve New England directly, the ripple effects could be huge for this team heading into the 2026 season. So here's the situation. The Dolphins decided to move on from wide receiver Jalen Waddle in a deal that, at first glance, feels absolutely massive. Denver didn't hold back at all. They sent over a first-round pick, a third-round pick, and even more draft capital just to get the deal done, with a late pick swap included in the process. And when you look at that kind of package, your first reaction is probably the same as mine. That is a heavy price to pay. Now don't get it twisted, Waddle is a solid player. He's explosive, he's fast, and he can change a game when he gets going. But are we really talking about a receiver worth that level of investment? That's where things get interesting. Because when teams start throwing around first-round picks for players who aren't exactly top-tier superstars, it shifts the entire market. And that's where this becomes very relevant for New England. But before we even get into long-term implications, let's talk about the immediate impact. Because for the Patriots, there's actually some really good news here, and it has everything to do with what Miami is turning into right now. When you trade away a player like Waddle and move on from other key pieces, it sends a very clear message about where your franchise is headed. This is not a team trying to compete right now. This is a team hitting reset. And when you look at the Dolphins roster as it stands, it's honestly hard to recognize. The offensive weapons are basically gone. The depth chart at wide receiver looks like something out of a rebuild in its earliest stages. There's no proven number one option, no consistent playmakers, and not a lot of confidence that this offense can keep up with anyone in the division. That's a huge shift from what we've seen in recent years. For New England, that opens the door in a big way. Division games are always tough, no matter what. But let's be real here. If Miami is heading into a full rebuild, those matchups suddenly become far less intimidating. Instead of battling a loaded offense with multiple threats, the Patriots could be looking at a team still trying to figure out its identity on both sides of the ball. And that brings us to the bigger picture. Because when you start mapping out the Patriots' path through the upcoming season, things don't look nearly as daunting as you might expect. The division itself is not as strong as it once was. There are question marks everywhere, and New England is quietly putting itself in a position to take advantage of that. You start stacking up the potential wins, especially within the division, and it becomes clear that this team has a real opportunity to build momentum early. Games that once felt like coin flips are now leaning in a different direction. And in a league where confidence and rhythm matters so much, that kind of shift can change everything over the course of a season. At the same time, the rest of the schedule doesn't exactly scream impossible. There are challenges, of course, there always are, but there's also a noticeable lack of overwhelming matchups that feel completely out of reach. It's the kind of setup where, if New England plays its cards right, double-digit wins are absolutely on the table. And that's where things start to get really interesting, because expectations begin to change. This is no longer just a team trying to rebuild or figure things out. This is a team that could realistically push for a strong season if the pieces fall into place. And compared to where things stood not too long ago, that's a major shift in perception. But as much as there is to like about how this trade impacts the Patriots in the short term, there's another side to this story that can't be ignored. Because when one team resets and another overpays, it creates a chain reaction across the league. And that reaction could directly impact New England in a completely different way as the offseason continues to unfold. And this is where the conversation takes a turn. Because while the short-term outlook feels a lot more optimistic, the long-term implications of that trade might not be as friendly for New England as it first seemed. When a team like Denver is willing to give up that kind of draft capital for a wide receiver, it doesn't just end with one move. It resets expectations across the entire league, and suddenly every elite receiver becomes more expensive. That brings us directly to the situation involving A.J. Brown. For weeks, there's been constant buzz about a potential move, and the Patriots have been right at the center of those discussions. But now, after seeing what it took to land Jalen Waddle, you have to start asking a serious question. If that's the price for a player at that level, then what is it going to take to land someone like Brown, who has been more productive and more consistent? This is where things get tricky. New England has been hesitant to part ways with a first-round pick in these negotiations. They've held their ground, trying to find a deal that makes sense without overcommitting their future. But the market doesn't always care about patience. Once a precedent is set, it becomes the new reality. And right now the reality is that teams are paying a premium for top-tier receiving talent. At the same time, there's a very interesting wrinkle in all of this that could actually work in the Patriots' favor. Despite all the speculation surrounding A.J. Brown, there hasn't been a long list of teams lining up to make a move. In fact, when you really break it down, the Patriots seem to be one of the only franchises consistently connected to him. And in a situation like that, leverage becomes a huge factor. Think about it for a second. If multiple teams were aggressively pursuing Brown, the price would continue to climb. Bidding wars have a way of pushing deals into uncomfortable territory. But if New England is essentially the only serious option, that changes the dynamic completely. It gives them room to negotiate, to push back, and maybe even to avoid the kind of overpay we just saw in the Waddle deal. And yet, there's still that sense of urgency lingering in the background. Because while it's great to win negotiations on paper, the ultimate goal here is to build a competitive team around a young quarterback. Maye represents the future of this franchise, and every decision from this point forward should be about putting him in the best possible position to succeed. That's why this debate is so fascinating. On one hand, you don't want to overreact to another team's aggressive move and mortgage your future unnecessarily. On the other hand, there's a strong argument to be made that sometimes you have to take that risk. If you truly believe you're one key piece away from elevating your offense, then waiting too long or being too cautious could cost you more in the long run. And when you look at what a player like A.J. Brown brings to the table, it's hard to ignore the potential impact. This is a receiver who can change the way defenses approach the game. He commands attention, opens up space for other players, and provides a reliable target in critical moments. Those are exactly the kind of traits that can accelerate the development of a young quarterback and transform an entire offense. There's also something else that stands out when you look around the league right now. Teams are becoming more aggressive in building around their quarterbacks, especially when they're still on rookie contracts. That window is incredibly valuable, and franchises are doing everything they can to maximize it. We just saw Denver take a huge swing to support their offense, and it raises the question of whether New England is willing to do the same. Because at some point, you have to decide what kind of team you want to be. Are you going to play it safe, hold on to your draft picks, and hope everything develops naturally? Or are you going to take a bold step, make a statement move, and give your offense a true number one option that can elevate everyone around him? The answer to that question could define the next few seasons for the Patriots. And as the trade market continues to evolve, every move, every rumor, and every small detail starts to carry a little more weight. Even something as subtle as a slip of the tongue during a conversation can spark speculation and fuel the idea that something bigger might be in the works behind the scenes. Because right now, it feels like the Patriots are right on the edge of something. The pieces are starting to come together, the opportunities are there, and the path forward is becoming clearer with each passing day. The only thing left is deciding how far they're willing to go to turn that potential into reality as the pressure continues to build and the clock keeps ticking on this critical off-season window, and the closer this situation gets to the draft, the more intense everything becomes. Front offices start to feel that pressure, not just from the outside noise, but internally as well. Because once the draft arrives, options begin to disappear quickly. If the Patriots don't make a move before then, they run the risk of missing out entirely and being forced to pivot to a completely different plan that might not carry the same level of impact. There's also the psychological side of this that can't be ignored. When players around the league see teams making aggressive moves to improve, it sends a message. It tells everyone in that locker room that the organization is serious about winning right now. And for a young roster, especially one led by a developing quarterback, that kind of message can resonate in a powerful way. It builds belief, it builds confidence, and it creates momentum before the season even begins. At the same time, the Patriots have to be careful not to act out of desperation. There's a fine line between being aggressive and being reckless. Giving up too much for one player can limit your flexibility in other areas, and this team still has multiple needs to address. It's not just about adding a star receiver. It's about building a complete roster that can compete week in and week out against the best teams in the league. But then again, opportunities like this don't come around very often. A player of this caliber potentially being available, combined with a clear need on your roster, creates a scenario that almost feels too perfect to ignore. And when you factor in how the division is shaping up, with rivals taking steps back or remaining inconsistent, the timing starts to feel even more important. You can already sense the debate building among fans and analysts alike. Some are going to argue that the price is too high and that patience is the smarter approach. Others will say this is exactly the kind of move that can change the trajectory of the franchise overnight. And honestly, both sides have valid points, which is what makes this decision so difficult and so compelling at the same time. What's undeniable, though, is that the Patriots are in a position where standing still might not be enough anymore. The landscape is shifting, expectations are rising, and the margin for error is getting smaller. Whether they choose to make that blockbuster move or not, the next step they take is going to say a lot about how they view this team and how quickly they believe they can return to being a true contender in the league as everything continues to unfold around them. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to Patriots Hub and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest updates on our New England Patriots. And don't be shy, share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The noise around New England Patriots is growing louder by the hour, and this time it's not just idle chatter. Sources close to league circles suggest the franchise may be eyeing an aggressive move in the draft, with one name echoing through fan forums and insider whispers alike: Concepcion. The buzz is impossible to ignore, fueled by a fan base that has made its demand crystal clear. They want weapons, and they want them now. At the center of this speculation stands Drake Maye, the young quarterback seen as the cornerstone of the Patriots' future. While flashes of promise have been evident, there's a growing belief that his development hinges on surrounding him with dynamic playmakers. That's where Concepcion enters the conversation, a versatile offensive threat whose ability to stretch the field and create mismatches has reportedly caught the attention of decision-makers in Foxborough. League insiders hint that the Patriots could be positioning themselves to make a move, potentially trading up to secure their target before rival teams have the chance. It's a risky play, but one that aligns with the urgency currently surrounding the organization. After seasons of offensive inconsistency, standing still is no longer seen as an option. What makes this rumor particularly intriguing is how it reflects a shift in philosophy. Traditionally cautious in draft maneuvering, the Patriots now appear to be flirting with a more aggressive identity, one that prioritizes immediate impact over long-term conservatism. Concepcion, with his explosive skill set and adaptability, fits that mold perfectly. Of course, nothing is set in stone. Draft boards remain fluid, and smokescreens are part of the game. Yet the growing connection between the Patriots and Concepcion refuses to fade. Whether it's calculated leaks or genuine interest, the message resonating from the stands is unmistakable. The fans want a bold move, and they believe Concepcion could be the spark that reignites the offense. For now, it remains speculation, but in a league where whispers often precede reality, this is one storyline worth watching closely. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our New England Patriots, be sure to subscribe to Patriots Hub and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.